Seeing it's 6 p.m., I'd like to call the August 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening and ask that if you are able to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Here.
Councilmember Baisden.
Here.
Councilmember Sonart.
Here.
Councilmember Petty.
Here.
Councilmember Winger.
Present.
Councilmember Naxted.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Council, before we get to agenda approval, I'd like to call your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add to item G6, action approval, AGDC public comment, substitute letter requested by the city clerk. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda with the added item G6, requesting unanimous consent.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's moved, seconded, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next up, we have the consent agenda. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
Second. Is there anybody on the body that'd like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to please read the consent agenda into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of July 6, 2022. New business, action approval, bills to be ratified, brought by the administration. Ordinance number 3300-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the General Fund FY22 budget, Police Department, and accepting grants from the United States Department of Justice and Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association for the purchase of ballistic vests, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on August 17th, 2022. Ordinance number 3301-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the General Fund FY22 budget, Police Department, and accepting a grant from the Alaska High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area for drug investigation overtime expenditures, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on August 17th, 2022. Ordinance number 3302-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Water and Sewer Special Revenue and Wastewater Treatment Plant Improvement Capital Project Fund, and authorizing a construction agreement and purchase order for the Sledge Press Replacement Project, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on August 17th, 2022. And ordinance number 3303-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Water Sewer Special Revenue Fund for operational chemical costs in excess of budgeted amounts, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on August 17th, 2022, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to any item that's on the consent agenda which was just read into the record? Seeing and hearing from from anybody, the consent agenda was asked unanimous consent for approval. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to scheduled public comments. This evening we have Responsibility for Americans with Disabilities Act Standards, Garrett Dominic. Is he online?
There are nobody other than the city attorney on Zoom at this time.
Okay. I guess we will, if no objection, we'll move along. If he happens to come in, we'll maybe adjust our agenda to accommodate. Okay, see nodding of the heads there. So that'll bring us tonight unscheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Please come forward, give your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. Is there a microphone here? Yep. Oh, sorry. There you.
My name is Keith Clancy. I live on 202 Linwood Lane. 2 weeks ago, while biking home with my family, I witnessed a near collision on Lawton Drive. My group was biking eastward near the East End Trails Park, while another group of bikers, 2 adults and 2 young children, approached on the other side of the street, heading west towards the high school. As our groups passed each other, a car heading westward approached behind the other bikers. Both groups were single file, as close to their edge of the road as possible. But as the car was passing the first of the adults in the other group, the child at the front, who looked to be maybe 5 or 6 years old, veered left in front of the vehicle. Fortunately, the car was already moving slowly. It managed to stop with just feet between the bumper and the kid in the roadway. The section of Lawton Drive where this occurred is a simple street. The graded width is nearly 25 feet, the entirety of which is painted into 2 car lanes. There's a painted white stripe on both sides of the street, with an average of 1 to 3 inches of asphalt before a gravel embankment. The posted speed limit is 25, but the street design and low car traffic encourages most drivers to speed. There is no sidewalk. There is no accommodation for bikers. Had things been a little different and the worst occurred, who would be to blame? Surely not the driver or the children, but to call it an accident is to suggest that these things are inevitable. We should not accept that. The fact is that Lawton Drive is dangerous by design. The street is the only access for numerous pedestrian-friendly facilities, including the golf course, recreational trails, and the disc golf course. Lawton Drive extends out to the high school, and at the road's end there is an unimproved path that goes directly to the elementary school. Lawton Drive actively encourages pedestrians and children with its land use, while simultaneously encourages cars to move at potentially fatal speeds for any vulnerable users forced to walk on the street. These design failings are not unique to Lawton Drive here in Kenai. I came here today to propose a new approach to street design for our city. Currently, streets are built to a handful of standardized requirements, mostly concerning minimum width and sidewalks. There are no requirements for bikers and other vulnerable users. The current standards are not flexible enough to create streets with slower traffic speeds. Streets should be designed by a street design team to the needs of that particular place. Safe speeds should be enforced not by police, but by traffic calming measures and design. Street width should be tailored to the intent of the street and not set to an arbitrary minimum. As an example and a potential test, I would like to suggest that Lawton Drive, extending at least from Tinker Lane to its terminus south of Swires Road, implement what is called an edge lane road, also known as a bicycle advisory lanes or bicycle advisory shoulders. This road treatment is ideal for roads with low daily car traffic like Lawton Drive. Edge lane roads help limit speeding while providing a safe and dedicated place for bikers and other vulnerable road users. It can be implemented with just paint and maybe a minimal amount of signage and can be easily reversed at minimal cost. This can be done in place of adding an expensive sidewalk while providing real, tangible benefits to all forms of pedestrians. My hope is that by making Lawton Drive safer for everyone, we can begin a new process to improve all of Kenai Street's design.
Thank you. And was your last name Clancy?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Clancy? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just wanted to say thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention. I do see some of our department heads taking notes, so I just want to say again, thank you for coming and bringing this to our attention.
Any further questions? Councilmember Sonert.
Thank you for coming tonight and sharing with us your experience with this. Having lived near Lawton Drive for a long time, it is heavily used by pedestrians and bicyclists and, of course, motor vehicles. Yes, I think that there could be improvements, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Knoxon.
Yeah, want to thank you also, and I'll make a trip out there myself, and I'll measure the width of the road, and I think it's a section line, so there's lots of right-of-way available there too, but I just want to see what kind of asphalt width we have there and drainage and whatnot, so.
And an edge lane road is often built on just 18 feet wide of grade, and there's 25 feet there currently. So
The road is 25 foot
It is
wide from
25
shoulder to shoulder.
Yep.
Any other questions? Do you bike down Lawton Drive often? Is that?
Yeah, I live right there.
I seem to, I've got granddaughters that play soccer over there, and I notice at times there's a lot of people that park along the road there during soccer time. Is there issues during that time or those times?
Yeah, so that is the section after before the Oilers, and there is a sidewalk. That sidewalk is pretty poorly built and out of date. There's no curb ramps. It's very tall, and it's like an asphalt construction, which has been allowed to break apart really heavily. And so there you do get people parking alongside the road, and that does actually end up calming the traffic and making people go slower, but it completely covers any place that a bike could go. At that point now you're having to go into the very center of the road and competing with other cars coming the other way, and it's kind of a mess. I was discussing the section mostly between where the Oilers field is all the way to the end, south of Swires. It's more complicated, obviously, to improve that road, although it is in need of maintenance.
Yeah, I think it was like, in the concept, if we're going to look at this, that we sort of consider that aspect also.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, because you have high schoolers are supposed to be going to high school there, and that there's a lot of homes there, and they should be able to go on foot, but it's dominated by cars.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments for Mr. Clancy? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the general public that would like to address the council this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearings. Item D1, ordinance number 3296, 2022, accepting and appropriating donations to the Kenai Community Library for the purchase of library materials. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3296, 2022.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3296-2022? Do we have anybody else online besides Scott? Okay, so that way I don't have to keep going back. If Scott wants to speak to it, I guess he can just raise his hand there. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Hatcha for getting the grants and bringing them forward and the donations. And also wanted to convey as well that over at the Senior Center, I talked about this at the last meeting, and they were pretty excited about it because it looked like something that would apply to a lot of the seniors as well as, you know, other folks here, of course, in the city. Thank you for doing that.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Akasha, for bringing this forward. I was just wondering if you could explain to us what your Library of Things collection is. Thank you.
Yes, so these are items that are not traditionally found in libraries. We have computers that can be checked out. People can actually take them home. Our games, our board games, and we have the STEM or STEAM kits, as we call them. Those are all considered Library of Things items.
I thought so. I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? I just want to say I appreciate your work here. As I get older, you know, the kids tease me about the font on my iPhone because, you know, when I download a book, Kindle book on my phone, I change the font so it goes from 350 pages to like 3,500 pages so I do get this. I appreciate that you're looking out for us. Any further comments? Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3296, 2022 is enacted.
Next up, council, we have item D2, ordinance number 3297-2022, amending Kenai Municipal Code 7.15.090, disposal of surplus or obsolete materials and equipment to allow for the police department to dispose of certain surplus and obsolete materials without advertisement, public opportunity, or procedures to obtain the highest price. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3297, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3297-2022? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Baisden.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3297, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Nice work, Chief Ross. Next up, we have ordinance, under public hearing, D3, ordinance number 3298-2022, enacting the Kenai Municipal Code, Chapter 14.30, floodplain management within Title 14, planning and zoning to regulate land use within the floodplain and authorizing the city to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3298, 2022.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3298-2022? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Winger.
I see in here that we have a memo for a motion to postpone this public hearing until our regular council meeting on August 17th to allow Planning and Zoning Commission to make recommendations prior to the public hearing.
Yeah, and Councilmember Naxton has language for that. It was, the clerk had passed to him. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. And is there any discussion that council would like to have prior to that? I did have a comment that I did talk to Max Best, who's the acting planning director, on for state, just include a floodplain map in the packet, so we have a little better idea of sort of the areas we're talking about there. Councilmember Jim Glendenning.
Yeah, that was my concern also, that we have not only a map, but maybe accompanying verbiage to describe the terminology that's on the map, and that would be greatly appreciated before we enact.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this before we move to postpone? So, Councilmember Naxton.
I would suggest, and I think it was implied, that it's not only important for us, but it's important for planning and zoning that's going to be receiving this next week to get just what was being requested tonight. And it wasn't explicit, so I'm making it so.
Yes. See no other comments, Councilmember Naxton.
I'll make the motion now, unless somebody else has any more comments. I move to schedule a second public hearing on ordinance number 3298, 2022 for August 17th, 2022, and to postpone ordinance number 3298, 2022 to August 17th, 2022, and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, ordinance number 3298-2022 is postponed until our next meeting with referral to planning and zoning. Next up, we have item D4, ordinance number 3299-2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport improvements capital project funds, and authorizing a non-federal reimbursement agreement to provide project support for a medium intensity air approach light system with runway alignment indicators, or MALSR, and any other impacts from the Kenai Municipal Airport Runway Rehabilitation Project. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3299, 2022.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3299-2022? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation. Councilmember Naxton.
Yeah, I got to ask a question. I think it's just a little different project, I think, for the airport, and to the city manager, or acting city manager. It appears that we're funding forward, and the FAA is doing all of the work, contracting and design and all of that, and then we'll get a portion of that money back, hopefully, in the end. But they're actually doing all the work. We're just pre-funding it, correct?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nack said, yes, that's accurate. So the FAA has a division that will actually do this engineering work. That group is not funded, I guess, in the traditional aspect, so they're funded through project money, which we will be forward funding once this becomes an AIP eligible project and we move towards construction and get our grant. It will include reimbursement for this amount. So,
thank you.
Councilmember Petty.
Yes, through the mayor, to the acting city manager. This is being coordinated with all the updates that's happening on the runway so that everything is coordinated properly.
Mr. Eubank.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Petty, yes, that's accurate. So as part of any major change or alterations to a runway, they revisit the navigation aids basically that are associated with this, and this is where the FAA has the expertise and will perform those services for us at a cost.
Further discussion? See none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance 3299-2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have resolution number 2022-58, accepting and adopting the updated City of Kenai Emergency Operations Plan. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Glendenning, or Vice Mayor Glendenning, excuse me.
Uh,
Oh, well, you can move to adopt Resolution 22 if you'd like.
I will do that. I move to adopt Resolution 2022-58 regarding the updated City of Kenai Emergency Operations Plan.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to Resolution 2022-58? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember or Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes, I know we've put quite a bit of work into this project, and I believe this tracks or is in parallel or even with harmony with federal requirements from Department of Homeland Security, et cetera, through the mayor to city manager, acting city manager.
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to defer to the two experts in the room, one of which who was a temporary employee who helped us update it, and then our fire chief, and I think they can field this one better than I.
Mr. Pryor, Captain Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. To all council members, what we did in here is the plan was developed in 2007, so it's been a long time since it was updated. So it took a lot of work, and we hired Mary Toll, who's with me tonight, as a temporary employee who had experience in some of the other plans of updating the hazard mitigation plan and some of the other ones for the borough, as well as some plans worked on by the city. And it took a lot of work of researching what was current information, what met FEMA guidelines, and so we took a long time going through all the different aspects of here, and a lot of the things that are added into the plan were not even in the plan to begin with. As you know, pandemics and things that we've experienced lately are requirements that are needed to be in there. So it took a long time to go through this, and you're right. Mary's the expert. I couldn't have done this without her, but together we kind of worked on taking each section, seeing what information had changed locally and nationally, and plugging it in there, and seeing companies, local information, things that have changed. There's a lot has changed since 2006, even locally in our city, as well as making sure that our plan meets the borough's plan, meets the state plan, so that when we have an emergency or declare a disaster, that we're following along with what we need to recoup some federal funds that is met. And even back in when this plan was developed, Mary and I were just talking about this tonight, that the funding that we were able to recoup, so basically the federal government will pay 75% of it, so the state or the local community is responsible for the 25%. So what funds do we set aside as a city to have ready in case there's an emergency? And as happened with the COVID, we were able to appropriate funds rather quickly in the event of an emergency, but yet in March of 2022, FEMA requested that a revision be made on how the cost allocations are sent. So this, based on what the state does, the income that the state has coming in, so that'll be changing, and I recommend that we're updating this plan again in a year from now, not 2 years as required, because certain things and calculations are changed. So what we prepare for as a city, and we're doing great as a city comparative to a lot of other cities, and we have that available to us if we need to, but there's many positions within this plan that people that are city employees and yourselves, that they know about who gets plugged into these, so we can operate as a city in an emergency. And then based on that, on these changes, from here, I'm going to recommend that we do training for all areas throughout the city, so people that are identified as plugging into Terry's folks, for instance, in finance, will know they need to have these specific trainings. Us as the fire department, the police department, all people throughout the city will have specific training that we can send them to make sure that we're compliant and our folks know what we're doing. So I know there's a lot of sections in here, and Mary and I, between the two of us, will answer what you have for specific areas, or if you don't, we're willing to kind of sit down with you later too, if it's a sidebar that needs a one-on-one as well.
Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Chief Pryor, for bringing this document forward. Just looking at page 91 and 92, just kind of elaborating a little bit more off what you said, this really breaks down the incident command structure. It lets us know right here that our city manager would be our incident commander. City attorney would fall under the legal. And this is an effective way to openly run when there is a disaster, and having this lined out. And we were talking before the meeting a little bit about the training, and it sounds like you will be working with our HR director to plug out these training opportunities to our departments. Do you mind expanding a little on that?
Chief Pryor.
Sure, thanks, Mayor and Councilman Winger. Again, yes, there's each one of these are broad areas as you look through there. So there's another page I think that we went back that had each of these has ICS 300 or these specific ones. But as you know, as we were talking about, there's 201, 3, and all of these different ones that are specific for a position that needs to be in there. So we'll take, once this is approved, and look at all throughout the city, the people, individuals that'll be plugged into these, and what ones specifically are gonna be available for them that we can request, because we can, as a city or local entity, can request so much training, this federal training through FEMA, but we only get so much. We can't get everything we need. But other agencies within the borough or in the state can request these, and sometimes they're online. And if we can find out about those or the list of them, we can take the individuals that need them, and I can send out an invite to them that, hey, this class is available, whether it's online or in person, and you're designated as this position, and this is one that'll fill the requirements for you. And hopefully there's not just a single one, but we can send everyone that needs to have these. And this will be a living one that's moving as people retire and new people come in, they'll need new training. So this is one that we should be referencing all the time, and that's on page 88 if you're looking at the document. Thanks, Mary.
Councilman Winger.
Thank you very much for that. So I think this is a great document. I'm excited to see this come forward. Just so everyone knows, if you're interested in more training, there is free training and courses, as Mr. Pryor was stating, that you can get on the FEMA website, fema.gov, and take a lot of these courses. They are free. I know when I was working at OEM and we were doing this disaster training, I've heard people say, oh, that really helped. I was planning my daughter's wedding, and we just did it off of an incident command system, and it worked great in planning. There was no drama, no issues, because I was the boss, and they knew who they talked to. So I've actually heard people use this in many different situations in their life, and I think some of you, as you're laughing, can relate to using this. It did work really well in my household for a while with young kids. We tried this system. So I just want to say again, thank you. I'm looking forward to the passing of this document. And I was actually discussing this document at our 20-year class reunion this last weekend. There's a kid I had graduated high school with, that this is what he does. He works with Homeland Security, Department of Health, Office's Emergency Management on the state level. He thought this was a solid, great document. So he was familiar with it. He was very encouraged that we were bringing this up to par within the city. And one thing I was talking with Mr. Pryor is this individual was telling me that there are sometimes positions that we can look at as another piece to this, where they come on and work with our fire department as an emergency management officer. And that brings more greater opportunity for getting grants that are coming down the line, because we have that person in place within our city. And Mr. Pryor and I were kind of talking about like the next steps and where we go after this plan. And I look forward to seeing how this will continue to evolve and better serve our community.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Petty.
Yes, Chief Pryor, as you were giving and explaining things, I heard the 75%, 25%, and then I thought that I understood that that would be changing. Is it going to be changing for the better of the city, or will we be responsible for a greater percentage? And is that dictated by how we implement training and how we implement what's prescribed in this document?
Chief Pryor.
Thanks, Mayor Gabriel. Councilman Petty, from 2000, last year, I guess actually 2021, we were 1.5 million per capita of the state, so it's based on that. So our emergency, we needed to spend $1,097,007 before we can submit in for that. And those are changing. And so that new recommendation by FEMA, none of them have ever went down. They're going up all the time. And so if they change with some of the changes that they're talking about, basing it on the income that the state brings in with the oil field that we have and our resources, our rich resources up here, I would anticipate that our funding is what we're going to be responsible for is definitely going to go up. I don't see it going down.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor Glendening.
Yes, with this, oh, I got to buy a round. Sorry about that. With this, with passage of this, are there opportunities for funding or grants for infrastructure improvement, roads, communication, even public safety buildings? Is that part of this? Is that something that we can apply for to have not only the training, but the physical improvements that might be required by this?
Chief Pryor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Glendening, yes, we are required to have a lot of these in place before we submit in for grants. We have to follow FEMA, the ICS structure to apply for them, and on many grant applications that ask that specific question if we follow those. And by having these documents that are up to date, yes, it puts us, it makes a checkbox that we need to have in place. But for your specific question, is there grants specific because we have this in place? I don't know right now, but we're always looking for grants to bring us up to speed with new buildings and such. And obviously, Chief Ross is happy to stay in the old building, but we would look at a new one for the fire department. But all kidding aside, no, we are looking for that all the time. So it does help to have these up to speed. And with the new infrastructure bill, there's many, as I was sharing with Councilmember Winger, that the wildfire protection plan itself has so many opportunities coming up right now that's the position she was talking about. We could be searching for grants with the many of them available to help accomplish what we have, because it's such a large scale to get everything done in that. We're going to be looking for every opportunity we can.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you. Tony, thank you very much for your presentation and everything you've done. And I didn't realize that you'd hired the big guns, Mary, there. When I saw her sitting there, I thought, wow, you're golden. And I know that helped with this document and creating it as precise as it is, because that's how she's been since I met you in about 1980 or so. But very good. Thank you very much. And also I appreciate you pointed out in your memo who reviewed it, the LEPC and the CERC folks and all that. And some had comments, some didn't, and you incorporated it. But these are all people that understand and live this stuff, unlike some of us that just I was an incident commander once, you know, well, maybe multiple times, but only one time really, you know, otherwise operations. But at any rate, it's very, very detailed and all that, and I think it's a very good document. It sounds like we'll have another chance to look at it in a year. Thank you.
Further comments? Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, again, kudos to Ms. Toll. I remember when she was over at the planning department at the borough, I would approach with plat maps, okay? And what I would do is I would go with the surveyor first, bring everything in, and I thought I'd have everything perfect, and usually I did, but I'd always intentionally leave one flaw, one thing out, okay? So that when you looked at it and didn't think that we were too perfect. And it was just a technique I used, and you're laughing now and you recognize it. Thank you much.
Thank you. I think you answered my question regarding I had a question about the shelf life because it seemed like it was referenced, the last one was from 2007, which 15 years seemed like a pretty long stretch, but then you said this would be updated annually, or you said it by requirement every 2 years, but you'll be looking at it next annually after this. Is that correct?
That's correct, because there's so many things that we changed in this from the 2007 document that we know. Even Mary and I were just looking tonight, and we seen a couple things in there like, oh, you know, you've been through a document this size, but yet we found a couple really quick that we need to change in there. And then after getting this training, I'm definitely going to be recommending that we look at it annually for the first couple years as we get training for everybody and put this into place. It would definitely benefit everybody within the city.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you look through that, resources change that are available to you. So, thank
Mary,
you.
would you like to add anything in on
Ms.
this?
Toll, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I look at this document, I don't see just an emergency operation plan. I see an emergency efficiency plan, because all these updated phone numbers and hot links, all those, which took a long time to go through from 2007, those can really, really help in an emergency. You know, you have a document that you can go to, and it gives you kind of a starting place and an ending place and a game plan. So this was an interesting plan to work on. I really enjoyed it. It's so nuts and bolts, and it's not just, I don't know, planner talk or, you know, out there in the word jumble. But I think this is a really good plan compared to the others that I dealt with. I looked at the state plan and the borough plan the whole time I was doing this to make sure that they would mesh. And this plan gives a lot more detail, which I think in an emergency will really help. And it's been a pleasure to work with Chief Pryor.
Thank you, Ms. Toll.
And this document will be online, so we will have printed ones for you guys. We'll have printed ones for like department heads and the people that are important, but it'll be an online document that you guys can access at any time so that we can change it as well. There's some sensitive information that'll be on a locked site. For instance, a lot of the police department's plans of what they do in operations won't be available for the public for obvious reasons, but it'll be a document that everybody can access online.
Thank you, Councilmember Basin.
I just want to comment, good work, and I would ask unanimous consent.
Thank you, Councilmember Petty.
I would agree with unanimous consent, but I really do appreciate the acronyms explained at the very end of the book, because reading through this without understanding what all these letters mean, it makes it more comprehensible when we try to figure out what's going on. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and as you do the ICS training, if you love acronyms, you love that training. I'll tell you that. But,
This is
yeah.
a wonderful example of alphabet soup. Thank you.
Further comments, deliberation? Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-58 is adopted. Thank you, everybody. Next up, item D6, resolution number 2022-59, granting sewer system and street improvement exceptions to Kenai Municipal Code 14.10.080, minimum improvements for King Cove subdivision pursuant to Kenai Municipal Code 14.10.090, variations and exceptions. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Gabriel, I move to adopt Resolution 2022-59.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2022-59? Seeing, hearing none, we'll bring it back to council. Deliberation, Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution is about exceptions, but I guess I wanted to make sure that what is being required, and I had to kind of read it a few times just to kind of, by exceptions, but the road has to be built, High Bush has to be built to standards and water and sewer all the way up to the cul-de-sac that goes east-west, and then the cul-de-sac has to be also constructed to standards with water and sewer. Is that my understanding? That's what is going to be required to be built here.
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Naxted. I do not believe that is accurate, and I'm going to ask Max to speak to it, if you would, please.
Mr. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. No, that's not correct, Councilman Naxted. There's an exception being requested for the sewer extension. The road exception is from the unnamed court going north to Pearson Avenue and then easterly along Pearson Avenue that borders the subdivision. That is what the two exceptions are for.
Councilmember Naxted.
So my understanding then is if there's no city water and sewer is going to go down the court into what is shown as wetland, even though it's more than an acre, planning and zoning determined that that was suitable property for an on-site wastewater system, and that would be okay without city water and sewer.
Mr. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilman Naxted, that's correct. That was a question that we had at the Planning Commission, was the developable suitability, if you will, for septics, water, and on-site development of that property. It's considered a lake bed 6, which is a forested area with a highly variable water table. And I believe if you go through the engineering analysis, which is proposed for this, for development of that area, you will have either engineered bed systems with mounded wells and, suggestions of no, and I think through our building inspector, we could probably encourage people not to have basements. It'd be a crawl space situation. So the development can be a little tricky in that lake bed 6, but those standards can be followed through a construction permit.
Councilmember Naxton.
Okay. I guess giving an exception to something when I don't have a soils report and all of that, I mean, that's what I would be looking at to make a decision to make the exception, that's okay. So I guess I'm not going to derail it if you are going to be getting a soils report from the surveyor and the design engineer, and is this exception contingent upon that report, now that we're talking about it this way?
Mr. Best.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Nax said, yeah, that if it's not suitable, if an engineer can't determine that it's developable, the subdivision will fail at the borough level, because that's a requirement that they have an engineer provide that information to finalize that plat. It will have to be substantiated that it can be developed. Otherwise, the subdivision won't go through.
Councilmember Naxton.
I'm sorry if I'm going on. It's just I could do this with I could have a black box that treats water to drinking water standards, and just say that's what everybody's going to use, and I think the borough would accept that. And it may not be a $100,000 project that each one of these little 1-acre lots would be able to afford, and I'm just concerned that we would be creating a problem potentially. I'm sorry I didn't call you before the meeting just to have this conversation rather than going back and forth here. It was just I'm satisfied with making the exception so long as the borough reviews it, and then you review what the borough receives as well as our planning director, that it's not going to be putting the city in a position where we're going to have some unknown issues because we don't have all the facts.
Mr. Eubank? Oh, Mr. Best?
No, I just said thank you. Yeah, that would be the case.
Yes. Mr. Eubank?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Max, but city code does not require that water be provided to these lots. The exception that is being provided is for sewer and for the road, not for drinking water.
And it's the sewer and the road, actually, that's my concern.
Further discussion on resolution number 2022-59. Councilmember Petty?
So I know the borough out on K Beach at the end going towards Kasilof, they allowed some opportunities for development out there that did not meet standards, and with flooding and heavy rains, those homeowners out there were flooded, and because there weren't culverts and things like that that were implemented, they didn't meet standards. Well, our non-standards and variances here put the potential homeowners in that same predicament.
Oops, sorry, Mr. Best.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilman Petty, in a lot of those situations, those were large 5-acre tracts of land that were exempt from any wastewater development, and it would have been up to the certified installer to determine whether there was a suitable area for that. And with that highly variable water table and the lack of training for some installers, they would have put a system in not knowing or realizing, because they're not versed in soil analysis like an engineer is, that they would install a system thinking that it would be okay, and they failed to recognize that there was a variable water table there and build a system that was adequate.
Councilmember Petty?
A follow-up question. So
Yes,
is this Lake Bed 6, is that a variable water table as well, sir?
Mr. Best?
Through the mayor, yes, it is.
Further discussion on resolution number 2022-59? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty?
No.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
No?
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yes?
Councilmember Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes and 2 no votes. Resolution 2022-59 is adopted.
Next up, item D7, resolution number 2022-60, awarding a contract for the purchase of Dell computer equipment. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to adopt resolution 2022-60.
Well, second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2022-60? Seeing no one, bring it back to council. Discussion, comments from council?
I'd ask for
Councilmember
unanimous
Baisden.
consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2022-60 is adopted. That brings us to item G6, action approval authorizing the issuance of a letter to the U.S. Department of Energy, National Energy Technology Laboratory regarding the Alaska LNG project. A motion. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. At this time, I'd move to amend the letter to the U.S. Department of Energy by substitute letter that's in our packet.
Second?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. And just to speak to that, we'd gotten a notice that there was a public comment for this SD. Let me pull that up. The SDEIS. And so I was working with Ms. Broyles on this, and I was a draft that sort of got submitted, and we were still kind of working through it, ping-ponging it back and forth. So there's no, the edits are just, there's no substantial change to the letter. They're just, in my opinion, just reads better than what was originally written. So it's a letter of support for the project. Ultimately, that's the gist of the letter, so.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
So-
original motion to approve. I just heard the substitute. Did I miss the original motion to approve and then the amendment by substitute?
Oh, there you go, sorry.
Well, I move to approve the amendment. Request unanimous consent.
Okay, is that concurrence of the second? Yes. Very good. Does that satisfy?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So at any rate, that was the sort of the reason why it was submitted the way it was. So with that said, any further discussion? Vice Mayor Glendon?
Yeah, this project is one that we've been working on for some time, and it will build on the progress and concepts that already have been worked on at the borough level through the community action group.
Yeah, yeah, so this is this is exactly what a supplemental environmental impact statement, so additional to what was originally scoped, so, and, you know, this is part of the process, is the public comment that we get a chance to weigh in and say that, you know, we still continue to support this project, and.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the issuance of the letter to the U.S. Department of Energy National Energy Technology Laboratory regarding the Alaska LNG project is approved. That brings us to committee commission reports. First up, we got Council on Aging.
Thank you, Mayor. The Council on Aging met on July 14th, and we had the city manager there, and Paul discussed the bluff erosion project in quite a bit of detail, lots of interest in that and where the rock was coming from and what it would look like. Then went on to update the council on the waterfront revitalization project. There will be no August meeting, and they are looking to have a work session on September 28th at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Airport Commission?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The next airport commission is August 11th at 6 p.m. here in the chamber.
Thank you. Harbor Commission?
Thank you, Mayor. Harbor Commission did not meet in the month of July, and our next meeting is Monday, August the 8th, here in the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Parks and Rec did not meet in the month of July, and due to a lack of agenda items, their August meeting was canceled, so we will meet again in September.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Planning and Zoning met here on July 27th in chambers at 7 o'clock. And we had 3 items that we worked on. One was a consideration of a plat, preliminary plat of Kings Cove subdivision, which we passed tonight by our vote. Under new business, we have had a resolution application for transfer of a conditional use permit for assisted living facility in a suburban residential zone from JAC Enterprises to Aspen Creek Kenai LLC, located on 701 North Forest Drive, described as Tract 36A, Keelan Estates 2014 repat. That was passed unanimously. There was a resolution PZ 2022-20, application for a conditional use permit, PZ 1524 for assisted living facility in a suburban residential zone from JAC Enterprises to Aspen Creek Kenai LLC, located at 701 North Forest Drive, described as Tract 36A, Keelan Estates replat. Just a note, a staff note. that the staff report for Resolution 2022-20 and 2022-19 can be found on page 21 of the Planning and Zoning packet. And this says that basically it was 2 different conditional use permits on a similar property, but they were different buildings. And that ends my report. Our next meeting is the 10th of August. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautification Committee?
Beautification Committee did not meet in the month of July, and they will not be meeting in the month of August. The next meeting is in September.
Thank you. Mini Grant Steering Committee, I did was made aware of an application that was submitted just prior to this meeting is when I was notified. So it was submitted by the Crime Stoppers group. So we'll put out a notice for the committee to meet to consider that grant request. On the report of the mayor, I did attend the chamber luncheon with Senator Machiki's Senate wrap-up report, which was pretty interesting, and kind of see where we're going there and sort of the process they went through to determine the budget, and how they derived at the PFD amount, and his opinion, sort of strategy going, what he would consider moving forward with that, even though he's not running for office, and then did one of the things, the takeaways for me was that we did pretty well with our capital project, because there wasn't they didn't obviously the general obligation bond wasn't voted on to move to the voters, so they focused on things that were essential construction projects instead of things like roof replacements for rec centers and things like that. So we were able to get in there and get our $6.5 million cost share. And there was a little bit of a battle, and just wanted to say me personally want to appreciate the governor, number one, submitting it under the GO bond package, but then when that wasn't going to happen, that we were able to move it to the capital budget side and get that project continually moving forward, because that is a critical piece to that pie. And with that, I have family in town, so I'm grateful that we've been keeping a pretty quick timeline here, because I'm scheduled to go camping here right after this meeting. So with that, we'll turn to administration reports. City manager, administration report, acting city manager, Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just a couple things to report. The PU fishery for this year ended as scheduled on the 31st, last Sunday. I give you a little selfish here, since I'm your finance director too. I'll give you a little financial update on it. From the revenue side, our net revenues, net of sales tax, were about $479,300. Our budget was $497,900, so we were about 96.25% of our budget. I don't know of any major issues with operations of the fishery this year. I know we had one vessel sink the last weekend, or maybe Tony left, but I believe it was Thursday or Friday of that last week. They did have a vessel sink near the dock, so but I'm not aware of any other major issues. On another note, the Mavis Cone estate has bequeathed approximately $600,000 to the Kenai Senior Center. And the administration is going to be putting together some options and maybe a recommendation for discussion perhaps at the next council meeting, to discuss what council would like to see done with that money, or options that we could see for those funds. Paul will be returning on the 8th, which is next Monday. You do have a couple of retirements here in the city that council should be aware of. Deputy Chief Mark Anderson is retiring. His last day will be September 2nd. There will also be a retirement party for Mark at the Station 1 on the 2nd from 11 to 1 p.m. I know council would be invited if they haven't seen the flyer already. Mark has been with the city for 23 years. So, and I know that the department is doing an internal recruitment to fill his spot at this time. So we wish Mark the best. Another retirement accountant, our accountant, Sue Best, is retiring. Her last day will also be September 2nd. And there's gonna be a retirement party here in council chambers for her on the 25th from 11:30 to 1:30, August 25th. And Sue's been with the city for just over 7 years, or just at 7 years. And then just to keep going on finance stuff, the city has made an offer to a controller. Miss Lana Metcalf, will start with the city on August 22nd, and we'll have about 2 weeks to work with Sue for a transition there. So pretty excited about that from my standpoint, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Just real quick, maybe we could have, could you send out just invites to the council for those dates?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Winger.
Well, I was just going to ask, when was Mr. Anderson's party?
On September 2nd, 11 to 1 at Station 1.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the acting city manager? Councilmember Naxton?
Yep, 3 easy ones. Actually, 1 comment and 2 easy ones. Regarding the senior centers, a discussion item that we had indirectly at the last meeting at the senior center was possibility of covered parking in the parking lot there. And it was brought up that there had been some plans drawn up that Rick Cook had, and actually Rick had his own estimate, I think, on them, but it would be just a post or some kind of a beam and truss roof kind of thing. There's a lot of seniors that would like that. It wouldn't benefit all of them, but it's something to look into to see if we do have, in fact, those plans, which I understand from Kathy at the senior center, they exist. And if so, maybe they're not quite plans, but take a look at that. That's a suggestion. The 2 questions I have, though, in going through the reports there, Parks and Rec, doesn't mention anywhere Industry Appreciation Day. And I understand it's happening, and industry is Parks and Rec participating in that and working toward it. Do you have any information on that?
Mr. Eubank?
I'm not even sure when it is.
Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Nack said, I have seen 1 email that's gone around to, I believe, the group that's organizing it, and I know Parks and Rec was included on that. I don't know the dates, and I don't know what their involvement would be at this time.
Okay.
I can certainly inquire.
Okay, I just didn't see it in there, and I understood that they were. The other question has to do with, and I see Scott is here, so that makes it even easier, is the report says from before that the snow removal equipment at the airport was delayed and should arrive in July. And I was curious, probably not here, but when it's going to be here.
Might be a Mr. Curtin question. Mr. Curtin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through City Manager Eubanks. Yes, that piece of equipment is delayed. It's coming from Craig Taylor Equipment. It's manufactured by LaRue. It is a new snow blower. The equipment, the main blower has been done for some time. We've been waiting on some parts for one of the heads. And those are being finalized. So I've been sending emails, ironically, daily, and getting different information from different folks there. So they keep giving me the, oh, it's shipping next week, and then I get an email 3 days later going, well, actually, we need to get back to you. And they wanted to actually use our unit at a trade show, which we declined. We told them we were not willing to wait for that, so I stopped that from happening, which they were not very happy with. But I informed them that our winter here starts a little earlier than their winter where they start. So I do think it's going to be here in time for when we actually need it. But yeah, it has been late, and we've been myself, the airport, Randy in the shop. We've all been communicating with these folks weekly for several months now. So And as far as like the exact day, my last communication with them is I'm expecting updated information on the 9th of August with the actual ship date. I was told on Monday that, you know, we were probably 4 weeks out Monday, but the person that, I got a person from that person's boss saying we're not 100% sure if that's accurate, and I'll let you know on Monday the 9th. So that's my most recent information.
Any further questions of Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yes, I have a question, dog park question. Is the dog park going to be complete this year? And is the complimentary question, is the fencing on schedule for installation yet this year?
Mr. Curtin?
Through the mayor, thank you, Mr. Councilman Glendenning, for the question. So you may have seen this week, we actually have been out working at the site, streets department staff. We actually had to rent some equipment, so we were kind of waiting for that equipment to become available. It's been a tough summer. If you've noticed on like AER and United, most of their yards have been empty all summer with all equipment out. So we've been waiting to have access to some of the equipment that we need to actually do that work. So Monday we picked up some excavating equipment, and staff has been out working on that. So we've installed the pathway down to where the new pavilion's going to go. New culvert went in this week. We brought the gravel up to that and established the entire pad for the future pavilion. We have sourced and placed wood chips around the new fence perimeter, so that the whole new property that we gave, we've cleared that entire fence line and have now placed wood chips on the trail for walking. And then we're currently cleaning up the area, the large grass area in the center. The dirt that was used on that was really not, Brad from the Parks and Rec director, it really wasn't appropriate for lawn mowing equipment. It was really just a muddy, terrible mess for maintenance purposes. So we've leveled that out. We're going to be bringing in some newer topsoil and reseeding that to make it more of a typical lawn that we would see in other areas of the city. I did communicate with Jeff Twait today. He's the gentleman that's volunteering to build the pavilion. He's still on board with doing that. I don't have the exact date. I know he's kind of coordinating on possibly having some materials donated. I do think that's likely still going to happen yet this year, but I don't have an exact date for you. And then representatives from Fireweed Fence are meeting with me Friday morning to look at the new fence layout. I am likely going to have them redo. They're going to end up putting back the entire fence. We had some communications with Home Depot about possibly donating and doing some of that additional fence. But Home Depot's timing is really not working out. It was going to be end of September before they could actually attempt to do that. And obviously I'm getting a lot of pressure from various folks on trying to get this done sooner than later. So we're trying to get that squared away. So my goal here is over the next 2 weeks to get that concrete pad put in place where it's prepped for the pavilion to be constructed. The pathway in from the parking lot to it will all be in place and done. Topsoil and will be placed with all the wood chips done. And then the fencing up to the point where the pavilion's going to be will all be placed. That's my goal, over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I do, just to tell you, I think this is going to be an ongoing project. I don't see this being done 100% this year. I think there's going to be some things where it'll be usable, but it'll be next year before a lot of some of the other things are. I think they're going to be doing other things in there early next spring, adding different apparatus for the dogs and things like that. I just don't see all that taking place later this year. So I think it'll continue on into next year. So.
Vice Mayor Glendenning?
Yeah, well, thank you for that report. Yeah, I think there's something, like you had mentioned about the ancillary equipment, like agility equipment and whatnot, and these are being arranged for through donations. And I believe additional funding has been sourced for these things for the Citizens Committee that is coordinating with you. So I believe the project is moving positively, slowly, but we will get there. And thank you for your focused attention.
Any further questions of the acting city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to the city attorney, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Bloom, are you with us?
He's there, he's just not unmuting.
I'll circle back to him just before we adjourn. Go to city clerk,
Thank you, Mayor
Ms.
Gabriel.
Sainer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. One, just to let you know that the filing period for Kenai City candidates is open through August 15th at 4:30 p.m. State of Alaska absentee voting for their primary and special election is here at City Hall from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And if any of you have noticed or follow our Facebook, we got our access to our graphics program, and I am using Facebook to notice our meetings as events or noticing the cancellations on Facebook now. So.
Very good.
And that's it, available for questions.
Any questions of the city? Councilmember Basin?
Thank you, Mayor. So just as a reminder for the clerk, you want these back?
Yes, please.
Any questions of the city, city clerk? Seeing none, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to council comments. Let's start with Councilmember Petty.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm thankful that the personal use fishery went so smoothly and appreciate everyone's involvement in that. Also, I'd like to thank the gentleman for bringing forth the comments about the bike friendly opportunities that we see here in the city, and as we're planning for our city, that we can implement those so it'll be a more bike friendly environment. Thank you for everyone's work. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you. Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I hope everybody is enjoying summer, and I want to thank Mayor for bringing forth the resolution for the East Side Setnetters, and also for the letter that's going forward on the LNG. And just everybody keep having a safe summer and enjoy the bountiful harvest that is out there.
Well said. Thank you. Councilmember Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. Have a good night.
Thank you. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I would just like to remind people that the Spruce dump site is still operating Thursday through Sunday. If you see somebody cutting down trees or working, maybe stop and let them know. I know I've stopped and let a couple of neighbors know that we're not aware that we have that available in our city, and they were taking loads to Soldotna still, and they were just really grateful that I stopped and let them know. So they kind of switched gears and waited for our site to open. So just as a friendly reminder, we do have that /site open Thursday through Sunday. Encourage people to get out and start winterizing their properties, get those dead trees down before the bulk of the windstorms hit us this winter. I will be out of town next week. I will not have phone or email access, so I always like to let my fellow coworkers and community members know that I'll be unaccessible next week. And then back to school starts on the 16th, so just reminder to everyone that kids will be standing in the mornings and the afternoons on the bus stops, and be cautious in those school zones. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Yeah, I just want to compliment our administration and staff for the thorough and instructive memos that they've given us. They give us clarity as to the projects that we've basically assigned them, and sometimes questions are asked just so people in Radio Land can get an answer, but the answers are always clear and accurate. And I note with interest, I enjoy working once again with Mr. Best. He provides clarity and leadership, and is able to focus on the issues regarding planning and zoning in our city, and I know it's appreciated by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I think we're in a good place, and you're going to stay, aren't you? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Councilmember Naxton.
Good night.
Thank you. We have no executive session tonight or pending items. Seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Mr. Bloom.
Yep, he's unmuted.
Sorry,
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel.
sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you. I don't have a report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thanks, Scott.
Goodbye.